Coming at you live, coming at you live. This is Skillz on Sports, the December 19th edition of Skillz on Sports, where I, a complete non-professional, non-expert in anything, just a guy who loves different leagues and different sports, I will talk about what's going on in the leagues, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, for the next 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how well things are going. And you will sit there and you will just sit there and enjoy it and listen and hopefully learn something and hopefully laugh a little bit. Does that sound like a plan to you? Sounds like a plan to me. All right, here we go. We're not gonna waste a lot of time. Usually, I get into many other topics outside of the San Francisco Bay Area where I am located, but tonight we're gonna do things a little differently because there was a quite a quite a massacre here in San Francisco Bay Area, specifically by the Golden State Warriors. Well, they weren't actually in the Bay Area; they were in Memphis. But you know, the stench of the giant turd they laid in Memphis tonight. The stench reaches all the way across the country, across however many states that covers, right here to the Bay Area where I sit. See, I can smell the stench of tonight's Golden State Warriors loss. That's how bad it is. I can only imagine how bad it is in Tennessee right now. They're probably having to put on masks. They're, you know, and not like the little fabric masks. Probably have to put on the actual gas hazmat things, cover up the whole, because the stench is just that bad. People are probably turning green and vomiting as we speak. It was that bad, people. I know. I watched it. I didn't even see well, thankfully, I didn't see the very worst part of it, which was the first quarter, because I somehow had fallen asleep in the middle of preparing for the show. um, Somehow that managed to happen. I missed the first 20 minutes of the game, quickly caught up to it, and quickly saw. The score was already lopsided by the time I tuned in like the early second quarter. They're already down. Golden State was already down 30 points by then. I knew right away, and I texted my group of friends right away. Shout out to Rockin' Weir 84. Shout out to Ernie Chavez. Shout out to AJ Cruz. Shout out to my boy Otis Bird. I texted right away that I wasn't going to watch this. After maybe about 3 minutes of action, if you can call what I was watching action, it was more like a dissection. I knew I wasn't going to be able to watch this game without completely just losing my sanity. So the game was intermittently on, intermittently off. I'd watch bits and pieces here and there. Watched enough to see them fall behind by 57 points. Do you know how hard it is to fall behind 57 points in an NBA game? You know how hard it is to get beaten that badly? It's hard. It's not easy. The Warriors eventually did lose by 51 points, and that was still the highest in the NBA this season. Not the highest by the Warriors this season alone. This was the highest in the entire league. The whole league. That means that my team managed to stink worse tonight than at any point everybody's good. The Washington, there we go. The Washington Wizards have not been as bad as Golden State was tonight. The Charlotte Hornets have not been as bad as Golden State was tonight. It was a travesty. And here's going a little further. We're gonna go into the box score and the stats a little bit because I haven't read them yet. I deliberately did not read the box score and stats because I wanted to share my anguish with you. In case you haven't figured out, I am a Warriors fan. Typically on this show, we don't just do San Francisco Bay Area stuff. I try to cover the whole NBA equally, or at least with not too much Bay Area leaning. But tonight was special, so we're just going to throw that out the window for tonight and lean a little bit on the Warriors. We will cover some other NBA stories and topics. So tonight, Stephen Curry and Draymond Green were both in the lineup, both supposedly healthy, but neither one of them made a field goal. And they both played. Let's see, they combined to play 43 minutes tonight, and neither one of them made a field goal. Two Hall of Famers held without a field goal. Curry did make 2 free throws, and that accounted for the only scoring by Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And what made tonight's loss even more stunning, as you may or may not know if you're following the NBA, the Warriors, who have been in a slump for a while now, who had lost 8 of 10 coming into tonight's game, had just acquired Dennis Schroeder from the Brooklyn Nets over the weekend, or during, was it over the weekend? I forget when it was exactly. But they acquired Schroeder in a trade with Brooklyn, where they only had to give up the injured DeAnthony Melton and I think a couple of picks. Schroeder is not a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination, but Schroeder is a capable NBA player. He's a guy who's won most wherever he's been. He's been to the playoffs pretty much every year of his career, except 22 when he was about to be on the Celtics championship team, but they swapped into Houston for Daniel Tice. Ha 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 ha! But Schroeder is a guy who was supposed to, and may still yet, but he's being brought in to be a difference maker on the ball handling, scoring, which the Warriors are short on both, since Brandon Podziemski, their second-year player, has been in an awful slump pretty much all season. He was supposed to be the guy to supply both those things, but he shoots too poorly to keep him on the floor for very long, and his decision-making is not what it should be. Schroeder is a guy who was supposed to, and still may, but, we hope starting tonight, he come in and fill those gaps, fill those roles for this team right away. That didn't happen. Schroeder was 2 for 12 tonight with 5 points. Warriors hadn't played in, I think, it'd been a few days since they last played. So they were rested. No major injuries to speak of. Just look at the box score here. It looks like just about the whole roster got in the game. So there's really just no excuse other than these guys were not ready to play. Memphis is a good team. Don't get me wrong. The Memphis Grizzlies with John Morant, I almost called him John Durant. John Morant back in the lineup this year after a lost 23-24 season. And he's been special. He's been doing his thing. And on Morant for a second, somebody, I was reading in a I believe this was a TikTok post, where there was like a highlight of Morant from earlier this season doing whatever. And somebody commented, someone who clearly doesn't follow the NBA as closely as they probably should, or, before making these kind of remarks, commented, well, why doesn't the NBA make John Morant its face? The NBA should make John Morant the face of the NBA. They tried! He blew it because he got a fixation with that thug life appealed to him for like a full year plus. He got carried away and started making all these gun references and being seen with guns or whatever he was doing with the guns. I forget exactly what it was now, but he was doing gun stuff when he should not have been doing gun stuff. He could have been the face of the NBA by now had he not blown his opportunity by being an idiot and forgetting he's not a thug. He's not about that life. Oh, and also beating up children. That didn't help. So for you out there, sir, if you happen to see this video, Morant, he's got a lot of he's got a lot of career left. He's got a chance to completely reshape his image, but he's not going to be facing NBA anytime right away, and that's why. So if you didn't know, I don't mean to come down on you if you didn't know, but if you did know about Morant and all his off-court behavior and you still think he should be the face of the NBA, then you need some sort of medicine. You need your head examined. And I say that with all due respect. I really do. John Morant and Memphis Grizzlies stomped my Golden State Warriors. Let's see some of their numbers tonight. I set this up to print on one page and somehow it's still printed on two. Let's see. Morant himself, he left the game tonight with an injury, by the way. I forgot to mention. He landed on his hip. Kevon Looney had fouled him, but it wasn't like it wasn't like a knock him down foul. Looney is just a brick wall. Morant kind of just crashed into him under the basket, landed the wrong way on his hip, which has been bothering him before apparently. And he left the game. I don't know if he returned because, as I said, I was turning the game on and off to keep from throwing up in the middle, all over my TV screen. Other contributors to the Grizzlies' cause tonight included, boy, look at all these high plus totals. Good Lord. Desmond Bane had 15 points. Morant finished with just 9, but they didn't need him to dominate tonight. Santi Aldama, 5 3-pointers, 21 points. So there was no one to do this. Just a balanced. Jaren Jackson, 17 points. Just a balanced, slow beating. 144-93 was the final. And that's like the The Warriors scoring under 100 points is not something that happens very often. It's got to be like the fourth time in 6-7 games that they've scored under 100 points. I'm going to have that in the notes for you. This is rare. Schroeder was supposed to fix this, and I'm not going to come down on him too hard. It's his first night. I'm not going to come down on him too hard, but, man, that left a lot to be desired. I'm really disappointed in the effort tonight. The worst loss in the whole league. And I texted to my friends, and just to close out on the Warriors, I texted to my friends that this Warriors loss, I don't remember even the Bob Sura, it's a great time out Warriors at Millennium's turn. I don't remember even them being this bad, losing a game that badly. And then I got to thinking, did they ever lose a game this badly, that Warrior team? So I just looked up what I decided to do, I looked up the worst team of my Golden State Warriors era fandom. Statistically, anyway, by going by wins and losses. And my fandom goes back to 91. So there was, of course, a 15-50 team of 2019-2020. The one where Steph Curry was hurt all year and they ended the season early because of COVID. But the worst percentage-wise team was the 2000-2001 Warriors, who finished 17-65 and had a 4-37 second half of that season. They won 4 of their final 41 games. So that was a pretty wretched team. One that I've mostly blocked out, thankfully, and don't remember a whole lot about. But that team's worst loss of the season was only, quote-unquote, only 39 points to the to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They lost by 39 to Minnesota. And I don't know if at any point they trailed by more than that. Now, I'm pretty sure at some point during the season, maybe they trailed by 51 in that game and managed to make it a little bit less ugly. That's possible. I don't have any way of looking that up without, just wasting valuable time and resources that I could be using to get my beautiful skin and giant muscles in shape. I could be using that time to work out and keep myself beautiful. So I didn't dig too deep into how far they actually fell behind that year. Not that it really matters. But the fact that a 17-65 team managed not to lose anywhere nearly as badly as this supposedly good team that was good at one point lost tonight, I think it says something. I think it says a lot that they managed to at least, every game they were in it by 40 points, quote unquote, by 40 points, or by never more than 40 points or over. But, well, I'm at a loss for words. It was just so bad. If you actually watched it, it was even worse to watch. I really did need to get away from the TV at times. But we're going to move on to some other news. Unless I think of something else I was going to say about my Warriors. We may or may not revisit that later. But some other NBA news from tonight was the return of the cat. Kitty cat. He returned to Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns, the longtime Minnesota Timberwolves big man, returned to Minnesota tonight as a member of the New York Knicks. And you know what he did? He balled out. As you might expect, he probably wasn't terribly thrilled about being traded. I really don't know. Some of you think I would have researched how he felt about that trade. I know how other people felt about the trade, but I never really found out if he really dug the trade. But he played like he had a chip on his shoulder tonight. He had 32 points. He had 20 rebounds against the old Timberwolves teammates of his, and New York went on to win that game. So it was the final 133-107. So it was a blowout as well up there in the frosty north. So good for Cat. You always have these revenge-type games. You leave as a free agent, or not as a free agent. Typically, if you leave as a free agent, it's usually your choice. But you leave in the trade, and you come back. I mean, look at what happened when Klay Thompson came back to Dallas. That was a trade. That was a signing trade. But Klay Thompson came back to the Golden State Warriors from Dallas, and he's had 2 great games against them now. And maybe his 2 best games of the season. Most certainly, his most recent game against the Golden State was one of his best of the season, or if not the actual best. So but his circumstances were different. He left under reasons and decisions that were not entirely his. I think he wanted to stay Had he been paid, he would have been more than happy to stay if he'd been paid what he thought he was worth, which really no one else that I have ever spoken to or listened to on the radio or anywhere else thought. But that's what happens. You know, you motivate yourself. You tell yourself, I'm going to show these guys they made a mistake. And even if they didn't make a mistake, Minnesota was a little bit of a disappointment early on in the season, but they've kind of picked things up a little bit lately without the cat. And whether or not the player wanted to leave, or whether or not the player felt that he was being treated fairly or being blamed for any sort of playoff shortcomings or whatever's going on, when you come back and face your old team, the same fans that used to cheer for you and still may cheer for you, you want to put on a good show. You always want to. It's like running into your ex. Now, I've only had a handful of exes in my life, and I've only ran into one of them once. The other one I have a child with, so I have to see her pretty much every week. But when you run into that ex of yours, no matter why you broke up, you don't want to look like leaving you was a mistake. You don't want it to look like, even if deep down in your heart you do wish the ex to do well without you, there's that part of all of us that wants to be able to say, yeah, they're doing well without me, but they could be doing well with me too, maybe even better. Maybe they're missing something. There's no shame in that. It's called human nature. Okay. My late grandmother, God rest her soul, she loved her some pork rinds. She called them skins. And because she called them skins, and I lived with her the first 23 years of my life, I call them skins too. So I'm eating these skins here, drinking some Pepsi, and talking to you about Cat and the New York Knicks. There was a bit of fisticuffs, almost. I shouldn't. There was a mirage tonight in the Utah Jazz and Detroit Pistons game. I believe his name is Ron Holland. Never really heard of him before. Gone to the Pistons. And Jordan Clarkson, who's been known to square up a time or two over his career, got into it a little bit. And it wasn't even Holland who was initially tangled up with Clarkson. It was some other guy. And it wasn't even really much of anything. But the next thing you know, near the free throw line, Holland is, I'm going to pound you, guy. You're going to get it, bucko. And here's Jordan Clarkson, who's like, all right, we can go. It was so obvious, my friends. It was so painfully obvious neither one of them wanted to throw a punch. And I'm not just saying because they didn't want to get in trouble with the league. I'm not just saying because they didn't want to get ejected or suspended, which they did anyway. They did get ejected, from what I read. But these two guys, when someone really wants to fight, you can tell. When someone really wants to kick the crap out of you, you'll know it. And thankfully, at least to my knowledge, have never angered anyone enough to attack me. Of course, it doesn't hurt that I'm 6'2", and I've always been over 200 plus pounds in my life. Not a lot of people are going to take me on. But even still, even a big guy like me, there's people who kick my ass. I'll be the first to admit that. But I have luckily never been on the end of someone that angry. However, I have seen others that angry. From dating back to high school, all the way through my college years, I've seen a few guys who, had they not been restrained, would have put some dudes in the hospital. And this was not it tonight in the Jazz Pistons game. No, these guys were like, yeah, you better hold me back. Yeah, if you don't hold me back, I'm going to punch this guy here really hard. I'm going to cause him physical pain and maybe make him bloody. Oh yeah, I'm so furious. That's Holland. And here's Clarkson, I don't know anything about Holland, but Clarkson, I know for a fact he's not really a guy who's gonna just back down. He's not gonna back down from anybody. He may not be an instigator, but he's certainly not gonna run away and cower. Clarkson's like, okay, well, if you want to fight me, then I too will raise my fist in the air, and I will punch you in return, possibly even more than you punch me. And what I can guarantee you, sir, is that when my punches land against you, you will say something along the lines of, ouch, I wish you hadn't hit me, sir. You hit so hard. That's basically what it was. Neither one of them wanted to do anything. It was all the hold me back, and no punches were actually thrown, but just the fact that they raised fists, the officials gave them an early shower. It was pretty early in the game, I think, too, and so they probably didn't even need to shout. Wouldn't it be funny? You see these guys after the game, while the game is still going on, you see these two guys in a bar somewhere. Man, we got to fake fight more often. Look, we got the night off. Check this out, man. That'd be something. But yeah, he's fake. And this reminds me of a quote from that to this day I still can't figure out. Jerry Stackhouse, the former shooting guard who's currently a Warriors assistant coach, a longtime shooting guard in the NBA, had a lot of great years. And Allen Iverson, the Hall of Famer. You know, those two were teammates in the Philadelphia backcourt in the first couple years of their careers. And from what I remember, they got into it one day. It was in practice or whatever, and they squared up. And I don't think they actually did fight. They were about that. They had to be separated or whatever. And they asked Stackhouse about it after the game. And Stackhouse, who, if you watch basketball, if you know basketball, you know he is nobody's pushover. He is not somebody you want to mess with, ever. Stackhouse said, "Yeah, two guys. Yeah, one guy who didn't want to fight, and one guy who didn't know how." To this day, and this got to be like almost 30 years ago that this happened, and maybe 20 years ago since I found out about it. I still don't know which one was which. I doubt Stackhouse would describe himself as either one of those things. So he must have been, and I doubt Iverson could be described either way too. So I don't know what that was all about. If I could ask any NBA player, past or present, any one question, I would ask Stackhouse, Stack, which one did you mean when you were talking about the fight between you, or the near fight between you and Iverson? Which one did you mean when you were describing one is not wanting to fight and one is not knowing how to fight? And I go like this because it kind of scares me a little bit. So that was our NBA. Oh, there's also making news this week. The new All-Star Game format that's coming up this February. That not a lot of players. Kevin Durant's been outspoken against it. A couple of guys. LeBron James said something had to happen. Something did happen. It's going to be completely different this year, and I'll get into that more in our next episode because I don't have it all laid out in front of me. I still don't completely understand it myself. Kind of like this whole NBA Cup thing, which was, by the way, won by the Milwaukee Bucks earlier this week. Doc Rivers is a champion again, my friends. And you said hiring Doc Rivers wasn't. You said Doc Rivers couldn't win big games. I mean, sure, he's out of the playoffs every second round every year since about 2010. True story, by the way. But that NBA Cup, that Emirates NBA Cup, is his, and no one can take that away from him, and no one can take that bonus check away from him. On 95.7 The Game earlier this month, one of the topics they wanted us listeners to call in about was finding ways to, because the NBA Cup, there's incentives for the players and coaches involved. I think they're all pretty much financial, which doesn't interest the fans in any way, which doesn't help the product in any way. And I'm of the mindset of, and the hosts were raising the issue too. What could and what should the NBA do for the Emirates Cup to make it appeal more to fans, to make it better for fans? And how could it, what if you could make the rules for winning the Emirates Cup, what would you benefit from it? How would the team benefit from winning that cup? And I never made it to air with my ideas because the lines were jam packed with people with much worse ideas than mine. But these were the ideas that I came up with. Number one, and this is in no particular order, just the ones I think of. You win the NBA Cup, for the rest of that season, you get a technical foul. Your team gets a technical foul. You get to pick who on the other team shoots the free throw. That's got to be an advantage, right? Now imagine somebody gets a T on the Warriors instead of Curry shooting the free throw. It's Kevon Looney. I love you, Loons, but you're not the guy who's going to shoot T free throws under any circumstances ever, unless something like this happens. It's just the way it is. So you have that. Another thing I would do is for home games, at least, if they allowed it for all games, it'd be probably a scheduling nightmare. But at least for home games, you would get to pick what officials work the home games that you play in. And we all know there's certain officials that every team got problems with. Scott Foster's a guy who the Warriors have battled with over the years, and this way, winning NBA Cup, there's more incentive besides money to win the cup because you never see Scott Foster's face again at the bare minimum for half the season going forward, right? I've been holding his skin for a long time. Let's eat this thing. So that's idea number 2. Third idea, if you're the NBA Cup champion, the following season, you can't do it the same season because you can't just screw up the schedule. But the following season, you are back-to-back free. No back-to-back games on back-to-back nights. Not even once. And the NBA has done a great job of cutting down on a lot of the 4 games of 5 nights. Stuff used to be very common back in the day when I first got into basketball, and even as a young adult. Over the years, especially in recent years under Adam Silver, it's gone down now. I believe they unofficially banned 4 games of 5 nights. Although I'm pretty sure I've seen something similar to it, but those things for the team to win CBA Cup the following season, gone. You do not play back-to-backs, period. And that's got to be a big incentive. And it may also even help teams in the off-season retain certain players. If you got a guy like, let's say, if you're trying to re-sign Draymond Green, if you're the Warriors, he's a guy who's played a lot of heavy minutes in his career. If he's a free agent and you're like, do I stay in Golden State where I will only play every other night at most, or do I go to the Miami Heat where I'm liable to be, play 3 games, 4 nights, or whatever, however the schedule shakes out. I'm going to be worn down to a nub and pretty much relegated to sitting on the bench like Udonis Haslem used to do for the last 5 years of his career. So that could affect a lot of things. But if you win the NBA Cup, if they want it to be this meaningful in-season tournament, if they want it to mean something, they want it to matter, they want people to care, you got to do stuff like this. Listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. I'm a fan. And then there was a 4th item. What's the 4th item I picked? Let me look it up real quick because I sent it to my friends. Here we go. The other one is, at home games also. And even if you want to do road games too, fine. But especially home games because there's, the fans are coming to see their favorite players at the home arena. Players get 2 extra fouls before they have to foul out. No one fouls out unless they get 8 personal fouls. And I was going to say no fouls, period, but you can't have that because then you'd have you get your Jack Haley type guys off the bench hacking people all day. Boban's not in the league anymore, but you'd have him out there, foul, unlimited fouls. Basket what? Basketball? No, me foul instead. Me grip arm out, suck it. That could be a problem for the league if you had unlimited fouls. Even if you win the cup, I think that's a little much. So we just cap it at 8. Cap it at 8 and keep it right there. Other news. My 49ers stink. And they've been under a wave of controversy this last week. Ever since Thursday Night Football last week when DeVondre Campbell quit in the middle of the game. Went through all the trouble of getting dressed for the game. Apparently, according to Nick Bosa, he complained in the locker room about whatever before the game. But still got dressed. Still took the field, or not the playing field, but he was on the sideline. Sat there on the sideline all game long. Was asked 2 times to enter the game by the coaches. Refused both times until eventually John Lynch went, as they call it, 47 red on him. And told him basically to get the F out, get off our sideline, and don't ever come back. And that's what's going to happen because he's been suspended, Campbell has, for 3 games, which is going to be the rest of the season effectively. And they didn't cut him because they didn't want to reward him because this is going to trick him more. This is what Deontay Johnson's trying to do down in Baltimore. This is what that guy Johnson's trying to do in Baltimore. We'll get back to that in a minute. They did not release him, even though that's probably what he wanted. So you can't set these kind of precedents. That's exactly why that Campbell's getting this little vacation rather than free agency. Because next thing you know, you'll have guys pulling Antonio Browns left and right, trying to get off their teams and get to wherever they want to go, or if they even want to go anywhere. Who knows? Brown never resurfaced anywhere else. I say good riddance. Most people do. That guy was out of his mind. What is it with Steelers receivers just losing their mind these last few years? Antonio Brown and all his nonsense. I don't blame it all on the concussion. I think it was that Vontaze Burfict gave him. I think he was starting to fall apart even before then. And then Deontay Johnson now, he's a former Steeler who's been misbehaving down in Baltimore. He's only got one catch since he joined Baltimore earlier this season. And he's got this whole not refusing to go into a game 2 weeks ago. Got him suspended. And then, of course, there's Chase Claypool's done some things that he really shouldn't have been doing. He's acted out. He's a big name for a minute there, and all of a sudden he's just, costing them games by celebrating first downs and stuff like that, and having problems with the Bears as well in their locker room. So, and I'm not blaming Tomlin. I don't know. That's not even counting Le'Veon Bell and all his mess when he was a running back. He's not a receiver, but I'm not blaming Tomlin. I'm not blaming the Steelers, because the Steelers just go out and compete every year. The Steelers haven't been under 500 in like 20 years. Have they won Super Bowls in that time? Well, a couple. Are they contenders for the Super Bowl every year? No, they make the contenders for the second round every year. Usually don't make it there. But, hey, there's a lot of teams that would kill to have the Steelers problems. But that's neither here nor there. Getting back to my Niners, the Campbell thing. And for anyone who wants to defend DeVondre Campbell, and let me just say this also, DeVondre Campbell. Somebody named DeVondre Campbell was getting all kinds of threats and messages and bad comments on his social media because the people upset at DeVondre Campbell didn't bother to check the spelling of the name of the person they never do, really. They just, the first guy whose name resembled his, hey, you're a quitter, blah, blah. It's the old George Zimmerman thing. Remember when George Zimmerman, the guy who down in Florida got arrested or got arrested for shooting Trayvon Martin back, I think it was in 2012. Got in trouble for that whole thing, and the whole racism element started to take hold, and people were making all these calls to George Zimmerman. You're a murderer, you're a racist, blah, blah, blah. Except for a lot of times they were calling George Zimmerman's in St. Louis, George Zimmerman's in Massachusetts. It wouldn't surprise me if George Zimmer, the former Men's Warehouse guy, probably ought to call her too. I guarantee it. No, I am not that guy. I do not dislike black people. Wouldn't surprise me if he got calls too, because they were just calling everybody without even checking to see if he was even in the same state as the guy you actually want to reach. That's what our society is. So, these skins are good, but they're drying my mouth out. So, Campbell, DeVondre Campbell, the proper Campbell, has not spoken out at all about the situation. Not that night, not any night since. It's been over a week now. He had plenty to say about his other teams on social media. He previously with Green Bay had some words for them when he was on Twitter, and they weren't favorable. And basically, what they were implying was that the team did him wrong somehow. And are you going to say the 49ers did him wrong somehow? Let's backtrack a little bit. Campbell was brought in as a free agent, as the Niners' second choice to fill in for the injured Dre Greenlaw. Remember, Greenlaw had hurt his tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl earlier this year, and they needed a linebacker to temporarily replace him until he came back, which turned out to be this past Thursday. Campbell knew this. Campbell knew that he was not going to be the long-term 49ers solution at linebacker. That job was Dre Greenlaw's. Dre Greenlaw is a stud. He's not giving up that job. Not for a journeyman. So, I don't care how well he played. And he didn't play that well, especially in the beginning. So, Campbell knew that he was only going to be a rental, basically. And if that's why he pulled the stunt he pulled, because he was upset because Greenlaw was giving his job back, if that's why he decided to walk out on the team in the middle of the game, walk out on his brothers, then he's an idiot, and he gets whatever's coming to him. If there's more to the story, I'd still don't excuse it or condone it. I don't care what it was. What he did, the way he did it was wrong. If he has troubles in his personal life, then that needs to be dealt with before the game. It needs to be dealt with before you present yourself as someone, a member of that team who can be counted on. Basically, what you did was you got everyone's hopes up, got everyone ready to need you and count on you, and then you pulled the rug out from under them, which is a crappy thing to do and a crappy way to go about doing it. He ditched them after Greenlaw kind of started to feel some problems with his leg. That's when that was actually the second time that he was, because the first time I think was when Demetrius Finnegan-Foles was hurt. I think. I forget the circumstances of the first time he was asked to go in the game. I know the second time was to replace Greenlaw. And his teams think they don't know anything's wrong. He doesn't tell them anything's wrong. He just decides, I'm not going in. But he's sitting on the sideline. He makes them think he's one of them still. He makes them think he's all there ready to play. And then he just gives them basically the middle finger, metaphorically. Which is doo-doo to me. Just doo-doo. I don't know what was going on through his head. And this is from someone, and I'm going to admit something to you. If you want to judge me, you go ahead. But when I was in the amateur baseball league, when I was in my early 20s, mid-20s, there was a time when I did something similar but different than what Campbell did. I did walk out of a game before it was over because I thought I was hurting the team. That's why I did it. Does that excuse it or make it better? I would say no. But at least for my reason, I still was for my team. I wanted my team to win to the point where I pulled myself from the game because I thought I was hurting the team. And looking back now, I still see that was a mistake. I see now that was still a mistake, whatever my motivations were. But I did not have malice in my heart. I did not have malicious intentions behind what I did. Campbell, to show up to Levi Stadium in front of the home fans, playing for a team that is already reeling, go through the motions of suiting up, go through the motions of warming up, go through the motions of sitting on a bench with the people he's supposed to be going to war side by side with, never letting on, other than whatever complaining he was doing, never letting on that he's going to make himself unavailable for them, that he's going to let them down and leave them to fend for themselves. Could you imagine a soldier doing that during a war? And I'm not trying to compare football or pro sport to an actual war in the sense of one can end, well, I guess they both can end your life, but you get the point I'm trying to make. I know war is a lot more damaging than football, potentially, but my point is, when you are, there's only so many of you together, fighting side by side, working towards a common goal, and then all of a sudden, when they're counting on you the most, when you're needed the most to be there for these people, and whether or not you like these people, these are your close friends or whatever, it doesn't matter. Anytime someone is counting on you, depending on you to do something, and you deliberately not only don't do it, but you don't do it after making them believe you will do it, then you are scum. In my eyes. Scum. S-C-K-U-M. Yeah, that's right. I'm adding an extra consonant to it. And I don't know Campbell as a person, obviously. I really don't. I don't think anyone on that team was really friends with him. No one spoke out in his defense. I think there was one guy that might have rolled with him. And going back to whatever personal issues he may be having, still not an excuse. It's still not an excuse. If Charvarius Ward can lose a nearly 2-year-old daughter, tragically, come back and play, 2 weeks later, even when he doesn't really want to, but because he knows the 49ers needed him. If Trent Williams can lose 2 daughters, or two babies, unborn, over the course of a season, and still be there for his team until his ankle prevents him from doing so, then there's really no excuse. There's really no excuse. It's as simple as that. People depend on you. And when people depend on you, you need to be there for them and not get their hopes up and then squash them. It was almost like was he playing a prank on everybody? What did he think was going to happen? What did he think was going to happen when he pulled that stunt? Did he think that he was going to be allowed to stay in the building? Did he think he was going to be allowed to keep his locker and his jersey and his uniform, and that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan would just be like, he's that Campbell, he's such a prank. But we love Campbell so much that we're going to just ignore that he crapped all over us, left us to fend for ourselves when we desperately needed him, and lost the game in part because of his refusal to play. I lost the game that we needed to make the playoffs, which mean a lot to us, which is the whole reason why we even do this job in the first place. That DeVondre, but he's such a great guy. Let me just come here, big guy. Oh, you're a quitter, but I still love you. Oh, you let us all down, you suck bag. Get over here. Of course, no, we're gonna give you a second locker. Why didn't you? I wish you had done this sooner. We would have done more things for you. In his mind, he really think that's what was going to happen. Part of me hopes so. Because what that would say that he's insane and nuts and did this out of insanity and nuttery rather than intentionally being such a scumbag that he would do such a thing like this. So that's where we're at now with the Niners. Campbell's probably going to be released at the end of the season. Greenlaw, from what I've been able to find out, is still able to play, and he's recovering from his, I believe it was knee fatigue or Achilles fatigue he was going through that day. That, I mean, the guy sat for like 10 months, or however long, or actually, Super Bowl was in February? Yeah, 10 months, December, okay. So, it's no surprise that he ran out of juice there at one point. Because I remember at one point during the first half of the game, he had played 10 snaps in a row. I think they had a graphic on the screen or whatever, or the announcer said it or whatever. And I was like, why is Kyle running Greenlaw to the ground like that? Now I know why. Because Campbell wouldn't go in the game. Yeah, that's the deal there. I'm only going to get into one bit of baseball talk tonight because we're already closing in on an hour. I wasn't planning to do this long of a show. The only baseball news I'm going to get into tonight, we'll save the rest for my next Skills on Sports, which is going to come up in probably a couple of days. It was announced today Sammy Sosa apologized, but basically he made a statement. Sammy Sosa, one of the greatest home run hitters statistically ever, 609 home runs, 9th all time, longtime Chicago Cub, longtime face of the Chicago Cubs, 92 to 04, who has been unofficially blackballed from their franchise since walking out on them in 2004, at the end of the 2004 season, and has been dogged with accusations of steroid use. He made a statement apologizing for mistakes he made without admitting the steroid use. He basically said the things he did were to help him get over injuries without actually saying the word steroid, PED, or anything like that. Sosa, within minutes, according to the report I read, was then invited to the Chicago Cubs Winter Fan Convention. Now, you have to remember, the Cubs have not invited Sammy Sosa back to Wrigley Field or any other event they've had since he left the team 20 years ago, since he was traded to the Baltimore Orioles 20 years ago. They wanted nothing to do with him. And not only did they not retire his number, which at minimum was what any other player of his caliber would have gotten, they gave his number away to some of the scrubbiest scrubs you'll ever find. I got the list for you here of all the different players who've worn number 21, Sosa's old number, since he left the Cubs. Jason Marquis, starting pitcher, who's not a scrub. He got it for a couple years. Milton Bradley, who's a weirdo but not a scrub, had it for 1 year. Tyler Colvin, kind of a middling backup outfielder who once got pierced in the chest with a broken bat. He wore it for a couple years. Then we get to the scrub. Now we're getting the scrub zone. Scrubber. Joe Mather, not to be confused with Jerry Mather from Leave It to Beaver. Scott Harrison, who was at the end of his career, a good player who was at the very end of his career by that point. Junior Lake, scrub, had it for a couple of years. Tommy Hunter, journeyman middle reliever, had it for part of 1 year. Outfielder Mark Zagunas, scrub, had it for 17. Tyler Chatwood, the free agent bust of all time, one of the worst free agent busts of the 2010s, had it in 18. Tony Kemp, journeyman outfielder, had it. Steven Souza, who had one great year in the majors and then was either injured or ineffective, all the other ones, had 21 in 2020, the pandemic year. And then scrub, still young, still has a chance to shake the labels. Ethan Roberts got it in 2022. So that's how much they think of Sammy Sosa. They've allowed, a dozen players, none of them, all of them combined could even match half of Sosa's career wearing his number. That's how little they thought of him. But the club owner, Ricketts, came out and said some favorable things about Sosa today as well, about how great of a player he was, how good it would be to have him back. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm going to monitor that situation. We'll talk more baseball news on the next Skillz on Sports. My Skillz on Pill segment is also going to have to wait. So this has been Skillz on Sports. I'm your boy Skillz. More to come no later than Saturday or Sunday. Have a great one, everybody.